Facebook. Yeah, there he is.
Especially in the Middle East. And believe it or not, the reason actually we have occupation in Palestine, occupation in the whole Muslim world. Give me attention, please. Occupation, the whole Muslim world, meaning Egypt and Saudi Arabia were occupied. The answer is yes. We're going to speak, inshallah. Why? Because the target, Brother Yusuf, will speak today. Okay, we're going to start with Brother Yusuf now. And I'm going to have some comments also.
Month. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's good to be back, especially with Sister Layla and Sunnahfollowers. Missed you guys, and hope tonight we're going to give you a very informative presentation, because this is something I've battled my entire adult life, going back further. Largely, it was an invisible force that actually propelled me, to Islam. The concept of liberalism, the most destructive ideology in the history of humanity, is too big for just one lecture. But we are going to focus tonight on how it is affecting the Muslim world, particularly in the United States. And as the Sheikh said, this is not just a U.S. Muslim problem. It's not just a United Kingdom Muslim problem. It is a Saudi Arabian problem. It is an Egyptian problem. It is all the Ummah is battling from this. I will be sharing you tonight some very glaring, depressing statistics, but there's always a glimmer of hope, obviously, that we can turn things around, because the enemy has all the money. They have all the resources. They have control of the mass media. They have control of publications and universities. Everywhere you go, you're going to get their message. Very few places you're going to get an authentic Islamic message. It's our job, inshallah, to change that. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I ask Allah tonight for strength, for guidance, for clarity of thought and word, and to touch as many people as possible with this very important message. So let's begin, as I like to do often, with some statistics. This comes from the Pew Research Department, who specializes in gathering opinion and thought on demographic groups and political leanings. We found that in 2020, 74% of Arab Americans, now I'm not picking on Arab Americans, I'm married to one, just that they're kind of the easiest to collect data on because they are a defined group. Certain groups like brothers from Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, they typically fall under the Asiatic or Caucasian classifications. Arab Americans have their own group. 74% in 2020 had a favorable view of Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden is not someone that popped up out of the ground. He's been in government for a long time, longer than I've been alive, and I'm not that young myself. His track record is there. His voting record is there. His corruption is there. Only now it's getting exposed on a more grand scale. But 74% had a favorable view of this man in 2020. Now, that has dropped to 47% since what has happened on October the 7th. 47% still. After what has gone on in the last 2 months, Sheikh can give us some updated statistics if he feels needed on the tragedies and war crimes and just outright genocide or attempted genocide that we are seeing right now in Gaza. But 47% should be zero. I mean, you can always expect one or two nitwits, out there who live under a rock, but to have a number that high, well, it gets worse. You have 69% of Muslims voted for the Democratic Party in the last major election. That's 7 in 10. Muslim Americans voted for the Democratic Party. We are going to expose the Democratic Party tonight, and we are going to see if their views align with Islam. I think you guys are going to know the answer after the first or second bullet point, on that one. We see overall, Arab Americans voted 40% for Democratic Party. So you had Muslims at 70%, which means that the non-Arab Muslims are actually much higher, in this regard. This is alarming. And we're going to go through some of the reasons why and how Islam is being used. And a lot of Muslims are not aware of this. People from the West, like myself, we know exactly what is going on here. We live it, particularly European Caucasian Americans. We know exactly what is going on here and why they view Islam as you could say, a non-European entity that they can use to drive a wedge between the host populations in Europe and the United States. We will touch on that, later. So the old saying goes, you can judge a tree by its fruits. What has liberalism produced for this world? What has the Democratic Party in particular produced for North America? You want to know what a Muslim thinks or how the Muslim behaves, you can go to the masjid. You can see the fruits. You can see the salah. You can see the shaking hands and the smiling. You can go to Mecca and see the brotherhood. I've been there twice, mashallah. It was an amazing experience. You want to know what the Democratic Party is? Let's go to their holy place, if you will, a place that they are undisputedly in charge of, the state of California. And we can find exactly what the fruits of that tree are. You have here in California some pretty glaring statistics. Top homeless rates in the country resides in California, Oregon #2, Vermont #3, Hawaii, District of Columbia, and New York. Every single one of these are Democratic, aka blue states. Now, what they will do is they'll try to play with the numbers and say, oh, you got higher poverty in red states like Mississippi and Alabama, but that's based on the economy of those given states. They pay less. My occupation, as example, would pay $150,000 if I lived in California. It'll pay about 80 to 90 on average here in the state of South Carolina. So they can use that to kind of play with the numbers, but we look at the hard data, the homelessness. Walk down the streets of San Francisco or Los Angeles and see what this party and what this ideology has produced for America. Drug use. LGBTQ is so prominent in San Francisco, they even have their flag flying on the U.S. Post Office. I've seen it. I've seen many. It's been documented. They have crosswalks painted with the rainbow. They have shop after shop marketing the lifestyle. You can look at the gangs. The prison population in California is through the roof. Los Angeles leads the country in crime. In terms of crime, soft punishments. New York City recently, they abolished bail. What do you think happened? You see criminals being let back out on the streets with some major offenses. People arrested 42, 52 times. Go out there, they kill an elderly lady. People say, how'd this happen? You let him out 42 times. That's how it happened. So you can look at the fruits, basically, of this party, and you can see the evidence. Have they produced the utopia they promise? Have they produced high levels of morality? Anything but. You find high levels of promiscuity, adultery, all other kinds of things that we find as haram, in our religion. So let's say, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. I can, say, okay, that's just bad luck. California is a pretty populous state. New York's a pretty populous state. Well, let's look at some of their positions and how we get to this point. So let's take one of their first ones. You have abortion. In this country, in the year 2021, 886,677 babies were aborted across the 50 United States. Those numbers were down compared to what it was in the early 2000s when it was about 1.2 to 1.3 million. Now we see what happened to our brothers in Yemen at the hands of a regime who I will not name. It's about 150,000 lost their lives. We were appalled by that. It was obviously a tragedy. Look what's happening in Palestine. Now, tens of thousands. We have 886,677 babies aborted in one single year in this country. And you were one of those 69% that voted for this? 1 in 5 women, as I was researching this presentation, 1 in 5 women who vote Democrat say this is the issue for them. The only reason they vote Democrat is for this reason. Now, as Muslims, we know what is one of the first things the Prophet ﷺ, what did he stop? What was one of the first things besides condemning idol worship? Burying the babies.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. And this was immortalized in Quran 81, verses 8 to 9.
I just recited something. I just recited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why would the girl ask during the day of judgment, why was I killed? For what crime?
Yeah.
Were you ending my life?
The fifth rak'ah, I did that. Yeah.
Kind of one of those divine intervention, to bring that up. And what the shaitan has done, he's gone from what happened here?
Centering.
Okay.
Just let me ask the question.
Yeah, the shaitanas went from massacring the little girls and justifying it to just simply massacring all the babies at this point now. Now, they will always, like the left does, they will hide it in colorful rhetoric. They will use lines like, it's a woman's right to choose. Well, it's my right to choose where I work. It's my right to choose where I do grocery shopping. But when it comes to taking your life or any human life, do I have the right to choose? The way they speak about the infants as if they are not human. This is some kind of attachment. You see these women, they go out in public and they take their clothes off and they paint slogans on their chest and they've got these soulless eyes and they start screaming at the people, you know, how this is their right, my body, my choice. That's another famous one that they like to say. You know, it's like, no, it's not your body. My son his body is not my body. You know, my body is this physical body which I'm entrusted to take care of by my creator. That child growing inside of you is not your body. But they live all this colorful rhetoric to try to cover up the fact of what they are doing. And this is a major, major sin in our religion. And again, for those 69% who went out there and openly voted for these practices, need to really have a look in the mirror and ask, who are we? What do we stand for? When are we going to say enough is enough? There's no such thing as a lesser of two evils. Evil is evil. And you'll hear that common line, oh, Muslims vote for the lesser of two evils. They're both evil. And I talked about that several weeks ago. I'm not here to advocate voting for the other party either. We can do a whole different talk on them at a different time. You know, we are here to enlighten and raise facts. What's another issue that they stand for? They have basically big on free speech restrictions. They have Zionist groups known as the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. The ADL was founded after the murder of a Zionist who raped a little Christian girl in Georgia. His name was Leo Frank, and he was executed. And the Zionists claimed he's innocent to this day, and they founded the ADL. Now, what does the ADL do? It goes around the internet and makes sure you don't say things that they don't like. They used to work alongside Twitter and Facebook, other groups, to make sure that you got flagged and removed. During the COVID scam of a few years ago, you saw these groups, again, attacking speech on the internet. If you dared to question the narrative, you were silenced because they don't like opinion. They don't like debate, these people, because they know the facts are not on their side. They are going to come out and censor you. So when people like me were sounding the alarm about the vaccines that were coming before they were here, that were sounding the alarms about the damages of wearing a cloth face mask for 8 to 10 hours a day while in a work environment, we were threatened to be fired, terminated. In fact, that's why I'm in South Carolina. MashaAllah, Allah always turns it around and gives you a great opportunity when something seems bad. So you find they're heavily anti-free speech. And one of the things they're trying to attach with Islam now is our blasphemy laws. Because we love our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We love Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, our creator and our maker and our fashioner. We don't like blasphemy. You know, we don't like people to be allowed to promote filth and insult our Prophet and our God on television. So what they do, they try to attach again to us in this issue to say, oh yeah, we're with you. We need censorship. And we know, of course, what their censorship involves, what other areas they are doing. So they try to seem good, you know, on the surface and then come after us in other ways. Another thing that's very alarming in the Muslim community now, and I've observed this when I lived in the Gulf, and I've observed this here, is another bastion of liberalism. We call it feminism. Feminism is one of the single most destructive ideologies that has ever been launched on our sisters and our women in human history. The objective of feminism was to create 2 taxable incomes in the home and to disrupt the family. That's the whole 100% why they promoted this nonsense ideology. They started telling the women, if I'm a husband and I want to take care of my wife, I have insecurity issues. I'm a weak man. I want to oppress my wife. I'm abusive, you know. If I want to make sure that my wife doesn't travel alone, or I want to make sure that I'm an Islamic husband, as the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me I should be. You see now in the Gulf, it's unrecognizable, you know, now how the ladies are behaving, how they are getting raped, being out on their own. We covered this last summer when we talked about protecting our sisters. what the poisons of feminism have done to our young girls. You see girls, they're wearing a hijab, and the hijab is all the way back to here. The abaya is out. They're covered in makeup. And then they wonder when they get disrespectful looks or treatment from brothers, from men. You know, you are what you are dressed like, how you present yourself in public. Feminism has wreaked havoc on Western women. The majority of Western women who profess to be liberal, over 55%, are on antidepressant medication. These women are alone, they are miserable. In many cases, they are childless or they are single mothers, you know, who have lived this ideology and have taken it to the grave with them. And now they've got our sisters in the proverbial crosshairs, and they are coming after us with this stuff as well. And all you have to do is go to any masjid gathering. I've seen it here. I've seen it in other masjids I've been to, and you observe the way the younger generation, as it gets younger and younger, it gets worse and worse. And this, again, is one of the great fruits that fell off the tree of liberalism. Another thing that they are promoting in Islam, and I've seen a lot of these imams cover this, and that is the biggest scam going right now, known as climate change. Saudi Arabia, and I had the statistics, you know, written here, is going to build basically it is, into a, written down, 110 miles. So this is going to be a strip. They call it Neom. Neom is a artificial human city, a smart city as they call it, that can cram 260,000 people into a very narrow, long, pretty much horizontal, you know, type of city where they will not be allowed to leave. They will live fully on renewable energy and resources. Everything around them will be digital. You will be living in a coffin-like apartment. They claim this is to save the planet, but you can't leave. How can you enjoy the planet if you're confined in a box and you can't leave? The Saudi government is openly building projects like this. They're openly building the fake Kaaba now in Riyadh. If you've seen this,
Yes.
This monstrosity has a horn running right through the middle of it, ironically. Inside of this artificial structure, they will change on the screens different landscapes and scenes. So you can live in a fully three-dimensional, phony version of reality while being confined in a box. And they will tell you this is for saving the planet. Is the planet really dying? Well, any independent scientist, their work is out there, they're far more brilliant in this field than I, can tell you it's absolute lies. Now they are pushing electric vehicles, you know, under us, under this climate change. These electric vehicles, the strip mining it takes to produce them, the slave labor that goes into it, is much more damaging on the environment and the energy grid. The irony is the electric vehicles still charge themselves through gas-powered charging stations. They get the electricity from combustion. So is it really renewable, or is something else going on? Well, now they're going to fit 2025 smart buttons on these vehicles where the government can simply turn off your car with a click. You can't drive anymore. And of course, it's all for safety. It's all for the planet. It's all for the climate. John Kerry just came out and said they have to shut down 50% of the farms. Another Democrat in the United States. 50%. What's going to happen to the people? He said because the cows are producing too much CO2 and it's harming the environment. John Kerry is a Skull and Bonesman, which is a fraternity out of Yale. In fact, when he ran against George W. Bush, you had 2 Skull and Bones fraternity members facing off in the election. What are the odds of that? No coincidence here. Move along, nothing to see. Climate change, without question, is the biggest scam facing. And you're seeing a lot of these imams are coming out here now, and they're giving khutbahs, talking about this with zero facts to back up the claims, zero evidence, and guiding us straight into this agenda. In Saudi Arabia, you'll get basically put in jail and probably disappear if you dare to question the Neom project or the Kaaba one. I can't think of the Mukab, I think is what they're calling it, there in the middle of Riyadh. Other examples of some of this ideology, the LGBTQ were quite familiar with that agenda. And I saw some very glaring statistics. About 50+% of Muslim females, about 52% of Muslim females in the United States do not have a problem with LGBTQ. I met a brother here who was telling me about the colleges. and how the sisters during the June Pride Month, they were wearing the rainbow flags and the buttons and all of these things. It's in our homes. It's coming. They're getting our children in these schools. They're getting our children through these apps, and they are continuously bringing this stuff into our lives. They're also a very big party when it comes to slack law enforcement. You remember a few years ago, the Abolish the Police movement that swept the country. A couple of states were so far left, they actually took them up on that and started abolishing the police. And sure enough, what happened? You saw the worst elements of society taking control. Islam is a party of law and order. We are a party or religion, of just rules, of fairness, but also we must protect the victims, not the criminals. This party protects the criminals, not the victims. A man in Los Angeles is now fighting for his life not to be incarcerated because 2 street thugs broke into his house and he killed them. And they said he had no right to fire on them. It was beyond his rights. In Islam, again, we are a religion of law and order, of respect, of decency. Who are these 69% of the people that are voting for this? Now, one big thing, and this is very controversial, and I have no problem with controversy by any means, the racial issues that come on with this party. In fact, they claim to be the party of anti-racism. That's one of their staples. They are progressive. But who are they really racist against? Or who are they protecting from? They have no problem condemning white, European, Caucasian people and insulting and belittling them, calling them all kinds of names. They sanction it in the media. They use terms that are offensive, such as white privilege, where they tell you basically if you're a European person who worked your butt off, like myself. I grew up in a trailer that the roof leaked. My mother used to take me to school. The car used to shake every time we stopped it. It barely ran. I used to stay up till 3 to 4 in the morning to take exams at 7 when I had a child, a wife, and bills to pay, and a full-time job. I don't want to hear any racism attacking me or my group of people saying we have something called white privilege. If you go to India or you go to Saudi Arabia and you go there as an immigrant, obviously the people who are of those nationalities are going to have more wealth. It's their country. If you come to Europe or to America as an immigrant, it's just standard practice that the people who already live there more times than not may be more set up than you for success because they have lineage. They've been in the land for a long period of time. So again, why are they doing this? Why are they trying to drive that wedge between Islam and Europeans, even though we are not a racial religion? Racism doesn't exist in our religion. We are welcome to all. And we have Muslims in this masjid now from all over the world, of all colors and backgrounds. Because in the end of the day, the Zionists want to displace native populations within their home countries. And they see Islam and immigrants as a way of doing that here in the West. That is 100% why they are attaching this to the Palestinian cause. And you notice lately they've been trying to use the words colonizer in the media when actually speaking ill of the Zionists. They are trying to connect the Zionists to European Americans and European people, or Caucasian, white people, if you will, saying, oh, this is white oppressing people again. The Jews are Caucasian when it's convenient for them. When it's not convenient for them, all of a sudden they are a different group. And they've used this tactic all my life. You'll see them on Twitter tweeting out things negative and hateful about European Americans. Then the next 2 weeks later, the same guy, same Zionist will come out and say, oh, I'm white, I'm Caucasian, when it's something that suits him and his ideology. So again, they are trying to drive a wedge between the Muslims and the European people of America, of Europe. And so far, unfortunately, it is working. But we have to do the best that we can to provide outreach, to provide dawah, to let them know that we are not their enemies. There are 200 million people in the United States who identify as this ethnic group. If we could convert 10 to 15%, 20% to Islam, the world would change immediately. We would have a huge base here in the United States. If we could do the same in England, in France. But when you come there and you buy into this ideology, like what happened recently in France, they're trying to start riots two immigrants from Muslim countries. They went to a high school party with the sole purpose of stabbing two white French boys. That was their goal. And of course, the media put that everywhere so they could sow division, again, and pump that hatred, out there. But why are these guys wanting to do that? Because every single second they spent in public schools, they were seeing this group of people being vilified, being told to hate this group. It's okay to hate this group. So that is what ends up happening. You found this type of hatred and this blind hatred that has been going on. This is a cause of liberalism. This is one of the core that when you dig really deep behind the scenes, this is what you find, what their sole goal, and purpose is. And brothers and sisters, it's a very pivotal moment because here, just a few weeks ago, in our masjid here in Myrtle Beach, I was asked to speak at a rally for our brothers in Palestine. I was very excited about the opportunity to speak at that rally. And then it was brought to my attention that some of the individuals that harbor those views were being blindly allowed in to participate in said activities. And I dropped out immediately. I could not. Yeah, we're not going to go into the details. We're going to leave it at that. But they are in the masjids, and they are coming. This ideology, as I said earlier, is spreading amongst our kids. It's coming everywhere we are. And we have to know how to spot it. We have to look for the terms, the buzzwords that give it away. And you'll see it on YouTube, and you'll see it in your pub. Do you have anything you want to add?
No. I want to say very important, actually. Biden a few days ago, he said the militant in Gaza Strip, they're raping Jewish ladies. They're raping Jewish. The Palestinian militant, they're raping Jewish. And this our president, the most corrupted person ever. Number those people, by the way, they always even not able shaking hand to the lady. No, not shaking hand. Actually, not only them. In Gaza Strip, when I was there, no one even shaking hand with any stranger. My mom, my dad, my mother, my sister, my family related, muhrim, we shake hand, no problem. My sister, my niece, no problem. But a stranger, there is no way. Not only me here, also in Gaza Strip. And Biden said that raping Jewish ladies in occupied land, Palestine. So if you hear this kind of things, our president is a great Zionist. He said, I am Zionist. He said, I am Sahyuni, Zionist. So, not anything Biden say, he is a liar. Put this in your mind. He is a big liar. Biden, actually all the officials, no question. But he said a few days ago, and I cannot even imagine president. By the way, the Israel now, Israel, 75 years. And actually, when he born, 80 years, 81 years, it was Palestine. He used to be Palestine. He have no idea what Israel is when he grew up. He know Palestine only, no Israel. So, but as a brother, you have to understand situation around us. And not only today, in my office, the brother he left now, he said, Brother Rahim, we feel we're going to be targeted soon, all the Muslims in America. I believe that. As far as our mouth shut when we speak, that means we will target, regardless, white, black, yellow, whatever color, as far as you as Muslim, you are target. So we have really to have to be more united, more together. This is the only way. Because if we are united, no one will look at us differently. If we are together, no one even dare to speak about us because we are power. But this is our country. We are Americans. As far as Americans speak the truth, nothing else.
And going back to those 70% who had a favorable view of Biden in 2020, Biden said these Zionist comments like back when I was a boy. I mean, he said them his whole entire life. Yes. As I said before, we knew who he was. He wasn't somebody who changed. I mean, he didn't come and say one thing and then all of a sudden he ended up being somebody completely different. This has all been known. The Democratic Party and their values are transparent. What I've talked about tonight, some of their major, points they use and some of their main tactics. Anti-family is another big one. If you go back and you look at who are some of the people who influence this party, they are people who have a concept, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where they will simply have children created by the state who grow up in incubators, who are raised basically by the state with no parents. They are taught to love the state, serve the state from cradle to the grave. That's the idea they want. In order for them to get there, they have to break up the family in any way possible. They want to control who reproduces. I talked about the climate change. One of the big things about that is population reduction. When people like John Kerry talk about getting rid of 50% of the farms and shutting the farmers down, they try to do this in Holland. The Holland farmers fought over the Netherlands. They know what's going to happen. They're not some blind fools who have bad ideas. No, they know what they're doing. They know what they want to do. They have a mission and a purpose. When they kill 886,000 babies every year, if you go up and add the amount of babies that have been killed in this country, it's enough to populate a nation. It's in 50 to 60 million. It is a genocide of our young, in this country. And I mean, for them to sit there with a straight face, if you are a supporter of abortion, I can't have an intellectual discussion with you. You cease to have any credibility to me as a moral, as a human being.
It's Islamically also.
Yeah.
Yeah, Islamically haram.
And for close to 69% of Muslims to vote for this party, with all these things I've talked about, and these are not my knowledge. This is public. It's everywhere. It's out there. Look at their platform. Look what they stand for. And you'll find basically the answers, quite easily.
But we have to make different, brother. Being Muslim by make shahada, ashhadu an la ilaha wa ashhadu anna Rasulullah, but nothing else. It's Muslim. But the one who practice what Allah said, what Muhammad said, is completely different. May Allah make us that we will follow what Allah said and Muhammad. And
now to go to the Gulf situation, as the Sheikh brought out earlier. I mean, I lived over there and I left in 2018. When I left, the surface was cracking, if you will. But I still have family on my wife's side that I'm close with, that I talk to daily. And the stories they tell me and what I'm seeing, they're unreal. You have these rave parties that are now going on where the people will dress up in, like a donkey costume. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And they're out there, the women and the men are touching each other and just violating every aspect of our religion. And this stuff is openly promoted. But what did the Saudi government say? The adans are too loud. You have to get rid of the adans because it disturbs the children. But they never put any sound ordinances on these parties.
yes, started with Egypt first. Started in Egypt. Now in Saudi Arabia. Imagine Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia with Prophet ﷺ born. Now they practice that. I cannot even believe it. Ya Allah.
They allow open platforms for atheists now on Twitter, feminism, everything. But yet, if you come with a conservative Islamic point of view based on Quran and Sunnah, they'll silence you. So many prominent scholars, as you talked about in here before many times, have ended up in jail, silent, not allowed to have a license, being removed, just for simply teaching Quran and Sunnah.
Ya Allah.
And they say this as being open-minded. That's another one of the liberal buzzwords. You have progressive, they're progress, they're about moving forward. You have the famous term open-minded. Islam is closed-minded, they're open-minded. And this is kind of the rhetoric that is being pushed there. But the free mixing, you would not know a difference in some places between here and there. I've seen carnivals they have now in Riyadh, where I thought I was looking at San Francisco or Los Angeles.
No, new things in Saudi Arabia. Competition for the beautiful dog. The idle dog. Right now,
The what?
in Saudi Arabia, now they're making a competition for what's the most beautiful dog.
Dog.
Dog, yes, dog.
Animal beauty pageants. Interesting.
Yeah. I cannot even believe that's Saudi Arabia. Yeah. When the war started, the most corrupted people, singer, actors, and this million people all over the world, competition over there, and people getting killed in Gaza Strip. And Saudi Arabia have nothing to do. And not even one sheikh allowed to make dua for the people of Gaza. In Egypt as well. Imagine. Saudi Arabia with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Egypt not allowed to make dua for the people of Gaza Strip. SubhanAllah. Or speak about it. This year, speaking about in Egypt, the Khutbah al-Jum'ah, about the election. Inviting people for election for the Sisi. Election, nothing else. Saudi Arabia, now for the competition about the handsome dog. Who's the handsome dog?
Well, pretty soon they're going to have beauty pageants with swimsuit,
yes.
God forbid.
I know, inshallah, we'll finish, inshallah. We'll finish, inshallah, 2 minutes, inshallah, finish.
Yeah, it's becoming unbelievable. And there was even, as it hit a kind of peak the other day, I don't want to quote the tweet because I don't want to misquote the blasphemy that this gentleman said, but it was one of the famous members in Saudi Arabia. And he had said basically that, we have a rich history and we love our idols, plural, and was referring to Allat, Manat, Uzza, obviously. And, here we go. And that's typically how it starts, isn't it? It's the past. It should be venerated. It should be honored. We should herald it. They bring in Iggy Azalea. So these people, they didn't even go in inches. Like in America, when they did the corruption, they went incrementally. You had basically in the 1970s, you had Elvis Presley was risque. Then you had Madonna. Then you've got all the stuff we see now, which makes them look like children's entertainment. Saudi Arabia went from strictly Islamic to Iggy Azalea within a matter of just a few years. And you don't get more vile and disgusting. You shouldn't even mention her name, but more vile and disgusting. And she performed a song which was encouraging the listeners to praise her as a goddess.
Oh, yeah.
And they had no objection to this. No objection whatsoever. Because again, that's open-minded.
In fact, the scholar in Saudi Arabia, they're praising the prince doing that. Praising him. I can't even believe this, subhanAllah. But of course, not the scholars. Impossible, available with knowledge would do something like this.
Even the former sheikh in Mecca was actually in the commercials. It's available online where he was doing commercials for the Entertainment Authority. So he was actually helping them to market this stuff to the young people in the country.
Sudais, right?
Yeah, the darker African gentleman. He was the sheikh back in the mid-2000s.
Kalbi.
Yeah, he's in you can Google it. He's actually in the commercials.
Adil Kalbi, yes.
And what he's playing, and the one that I saw, is even the way they're making fun of the religion. He was pretending to be a commander in the army, trying to stop the fun and the entertainment, but it just overpowered him. He couldn't stop the force, And it was just this triumph type of message that they were demonstrating, which was showing that this is the good side that's winning, and that old style is losing, And it's again, I've seen this growing up in this country. It's the same blueprint, same people, same tactics, same psychology. And it's taking place now. People wonder why there was no support for Palestine from these particular countries.
Okay, inshallah, we'll finish, inshallah, the time. Since Sunnahfollowers, I know, unfortunately, I didn't know how to have a voice to answer your question. Forgive me, please. But I have a question here. Tafadhal.
From my observation that I noticed is in this year, as far as the Muslim voting for the Democratic Party, I saw that the media plays a big role in it because obviously Muslims watch a lot of TV too.
Mm-hmm.
But how much is to bring the imams or the liberal imams or whatever they call
Oh, big time. Oh, big time. 100%. You were seeing, and there was a project founded by the RAND Corporation, which is a kind of think tank group. They've got their hand all over the world. In 2001, it was called Compassionate Islam. And what they were going to do was train and fund a generation of imams to come out and use this new social media platforms that were developing at the time to promote this progressive version of Islam.
But not all the imams.
Not all of them. I wouldn't say all of them. Of course not. No.
Yeah.
No, there's a whole crop, obviously, we know some, the old school ways, but this was a project to train this group of compassionate imams to go to the masjids, to go on YouTube, to make videos. And that's why you see a lot of times the ones that are the most famous, that have the most views, they're getting support from YouTube. They're getting support from these other channels. And they're being allowed to put this message out there because they're working again for those same people. It's all part of this agenda because they know that Islam is a threat to the New World Order. It's a threat to this global governance. It's a threat to the society they're wanting to build. So what they have to do is go inside and just change it, warp it.
But this group, actually, they created ISIS.
Yeah.
They created ISIS, and they claim that ISIS is the Muslims. And of course, ISIS absolutely is not Muslims. Yeah. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe the ISIS, Muslim, ISIS. But we don't believe that. We believe ISIS is the Muslims. SubhanAllah.
I mean, I was in the break room, yes, sir. I wanted to say one point on that. I was in the break room years ago when I worked at Walmart when I was in my early 20s, and there was a guy in there, and this was back after 9/11 times where everybody was an authority on Islam, even though they probably hadn't read one word in the Quran. And he was saying, "Oh, I've read the Quran, and it's such a violent book. They say in there, any non-believer, you must kill him immediately if you meet him." And at the time, I never read the Quran. And a lot of us were hearing these things that are so outrageous. We're wondering, is this possibly even true? But this was just being repeated and repeated and repeated, by largely do this before ISIS, but they had the Al-Qaeda, and there'll be another one coming up in a few years. So they give us liberal Islam controlled. And then over here you have this stuff, which is also controlled, and it's two opposite ends of the spectrum, where the real Islam is, right in the middle.
Yeah, well, that's Allah.
Yes.
The global warming, we were talking about global
Mhm.
warming and being a myth.
Mhm.
There's no global warming. How do you explain all the change in weather that's being customary all over the world? The ice glaciers are breaking. The rain,
Mhm.
certainly in the United States, are more severe than ever been in the last 25 years. The California wildfire going on, that started earlier and earlier. Are burning more and more and more. Canadian forest is being burned. Europe suffers so much
Mhm.
of weather-related issues. And you say that global.
Oh, and I'm loving this question because we're about to get some truth out here.
How do you relate all that's happening
Mhm.
against being the global warming? It's not really happening.
Well, in the Canadian case, they arrested 3 gentlemen, eco-terrorists for arson, sabotaged, again, to largely promote this. California, pretty much the same thing. Greece, they busted a whole ring of terrorists who set those fires a few years ago because they were trying to prove this. In terms of storms, we have access to media. We didn't have this before. How can we say how many tornadoes, as an example, hit the Midwest in 1920? Or 1930. We did not have the type of coverage and the type of, everybody's got a camera now, everybody can document something. Hurricanes, we had the weakest hurricane seasons in the past few years. The global temperatures are not going up. In fact, what they did was they actually take temperature measurements that they use to show high temperatures in airports, where those hot engines and that hot asphalt radiate heat and give an illusion that there's a higher temperature. There just was an example I saw a couple months ago on this. They were showing a news weather broadcast from 1988 versus 2023. This was from England. The temperatures were actually lower in this day than they were back then. But what was telltale was that the lady back then was showing the sun as yellow and green in her little weather map that she was showing. 2020, she was showing it red and black. Psychology. They are basically, oh my God, it's 88 in July, you think? And they do stuff like this to play games with you. So in terms of natural disasters, statistically, that doesn't add up. And I welcome everybody to do their own research on this, to go and look at independent.
Very important here. My first PhD, first time I think like that. My first PhD, I have 2 PhDs. One in geology, structural geology. My first PhD, if you go, you can Google me. My PhD in structural geology. Al Gore, I know him very well. I was a professor at Drake University in Iowa. 3.5 years or there. Then the cancer killing my liver. So I left Iowa to Texas for liver transplant. So I work with Al Gore. There is global warming. They try to switch it according to their agenda. But there is. But kind here.
Well, you have
would-
warming based on activity, natural
Exactly.
activity, but it's not man-made. you know,
exactly.
But it goes in cycles.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, for example, the hurricane that recently would have in our area here, yeah, global warming. But now the question is why we have global warming? What is the reason? For example, this 501 in the daytime, barely to walk. Cars and cars and gas contamination, pollution. That causes global warming. Actually, not the global warming, the one, their agenda, the weather change. The continent of the earth change. The sky change. The rain change. You know, completely. That's scientifically.
You're not gonna find the one.
They've drilled into the ice cores.
Compared to Los Angeles, you know, with I-10 and I-5 in Los Angeles, where you have 6 lanes on each side, and you got traffic jam, and all these cars stand there idling. What do you think all that gas is going? It's making a hole in the ozone.
Agree.
That by itself making the sun even closer, making the heat of the sun even stronger. You have the temperature, regular temperature in the earth went 1.5 degrees. The ocean is rising higher than what it was.
We got pictures from 1880 where there's no rising.
Manufacture that just to say we have global warming?
No, actually, what we have, the problem that the term global warming, the term according to the agenda, yes, we believe in it. Scientifically, yes, but they change it many ways. Many ways, especially start with Al Gore.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know, by the way, I know him in person when I was in Iowa.
It's not much of one attribute, it's many attributes.
Yes.
That get into the global warming.
Agree. Yes.
And then the glacier is breaking up.
They showed us recently, there's a study, their ice caps are growing.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes.
All the studies that they say the glacier are breaking up, are melting, and then all of this, their study found it by specific people to specific scientists. If you look at independent scientists, there's nothing going on with that. I'll quote you something from a famous person in the United States that said, according to the climate change agenda, is that Florida will not exist in 30 years. That's what they say.
They've been saying,
Because the ocean will go raise so high that you're not gonna have Florida and so many other places, and New York and so on. And then he said, why all these bankers and all these investment companies are still investing in Florida when they're not gonna get their money back? If the banks are giving money for houses and, you know, for everything, they're not gonna get their money back. Do you think they're stupid?
No.
So they put in money
Business.
because they know what's going on.
Yes.
But might be a warming, but the way they're using that warming or whatever they're using is something big going on, which is against the people.
I agree with you, Brother Salah and Brother Yufran. You are right 100%. But also, my point, Brother Yusuf, that change the agenda war. Yes, that is nature. We believe in that. Actually, we see that. Obviously, we see that. Yes, please.
I'd just like to make a comment. I think people should do their own research into how the weather on the sun affects the weather on the earth.
well, that's 100% what it is.
Yes.
And this plant has gone, they've
Yes.
drilled into the ice cores, I was about to
Thank
say earlier, and they found CO2 levels basically in the old past, basically to what CO2 levels are now. And you see basically high CO2 corresponds with great life, growth. These people are wanting to strip the planet of CO2. What is that going to do to life forms? What is that going to do to livestock? What is that going to do to us? CO2 is the building block here. And you can tell by the agenda about what the overall goals are of said agenda. Their goal is to make you poor, to make you eat the insects, to make you not have basic access to meat. They've all but said this. You can go look around. They're trying to condition the young people in the UK now to eat insects instead of eating regular meat. They've been trying for years to feed us those phony, artificial, processed vegetable burgers and all these other things, which are more expensive, you know, by the way, than regular meat, which are also not healthy and harmful for the body.
2 minutes.
And this whole issue is, as we said, we open up a can of
2 minutes
worms
inshallah, we're
here.
gonna finish. Inshallah. Inshallah, brother Yusuf, inshallah, will continue next week. I'm coming, inshallah, next week, bi'idhnillah. And we'd love to see you. Some people come for Salat al-Fajr and they stop to come. Saturday, we read Surah Al-Kahf. And today, actually, only one person read Surah Al-Kahf with me. It was very, very sad. So please, let me see you, inshallah, next week. أسأل الله العظيم رب العالمين أن يهدينا الحق. اللهم يا رب يا مؤلف قلوب ألف قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم يا مؤلف قلوب ألف قلوبنا على دينك واهدينا صراط المستقيم واهدينا صراط المستقيم وانصر المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم يا رب انصر المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك محمد. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاك الله خير brother Yusuf. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.